Anka, could you give me the screen, please?
Yeah, sure. I'll start recording, Oscar. Okay, so this is the official beginning. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, and then the official disclaimer. Please note that this session is being recorded. And Anka, please remind me, will the recording be publicly available?
Yes, we can post it.
Okay, then people know that. So everybody, welcome to the eSSIF-Lab Infrastructure Open Call number 2 demo workshop. So for your information, eSSIF-Lab is a European program in which TNO, Funding Box, and 2 other parties, Blue Morpho and Jarnet, are responsible for funding subgrantees, which are typically small and medium enterprises and other types of innovators to develop useful SSI functionality, to open source it, to help with the standardization of it, and also to do interoperability testing. So we are now more than midway of the program. So we have now had already several flocks of subgrantees graduating. I don't know whether that's the correct word, but you get it successfully finishing the project. And one of the things that we want to achieve with this workshop is for you to understand what are the results that have been created, what is the open source, where is the open source code, what can you do with it, etc., etc. So ultimately, we want to encourage you to not only watch and applaud our subgrantees, but also think about, hey, how can I use the results for my own purpose? So the agenda is shown on the screen. We have today 5 eSSIF-Lab subgrantees of 5 different organizations, and we also have a break and plenty of room for discussion. And as mentioned before, if you have any question during a presentation, please use the chat, and then the presenter or either the chairman will pick up on the question. Then let me immediately go to my presentation, which is only an introductory presentation and only a single slide. So what we're doing within eSSIF-Lab is creating an SSI ecosystem together. And for this, we have a total of, I think, already more than 50 subgrantees. And we have subgrantee projects in 3 different categories. We have them in the infrastructure category, which is what we will be talking about today. And this is where our subgrantees have developed pieces of open source, tested their integration, interoperability, standardization. We have completed earlier our first business-oriented program, where subgrantees made generic SSI functionality, software, and services on a commercial basis. So they have gotten a lot of business support in the program. And there is the business-oriented program number 2, which is about the sector-specific applications. And then we are talking about educational application, healthcare applications, governmental applications, etc. And as you can also see in this picture, there are a lot of arrows between the different parts. So we take a good care of making sure that components developed in the one place are being used in the other place, so that we are actually developing an SSI ecosystem together. I think that this already completes my introduction. I don't want to fill the full time. So let's go to our first subgrantee for today, the first demo, which will be WordPress SSI, which is a WordPress plugin that eliminates username password logins. And I guess, Fabio, you will be the presenter?
Okay, yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, okay. I can hear you.
Thank you. Can I share my screen?
Yes, sure. Just a second.
Thank you.
You should be able to share now.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, now you should see my screen. Okay. So, welcome everyone. I'm very happy to be here. It's a pleasure and an honor. I will talk to you about the what we call the WordPreSSI. It is a plugin that eliminates username and password logins. First of all, let me introduce myself and our association. I'm the founder and CTO of Araneum Group SRL. I'm a counselor of API, which is the Associazione Blockchain Italia. And in 2018, I've been selected as a member of the Blockchain Task Force of Experts in the Italian Ministry of Economic Development. And the Associazione Blockchain Italia is an Italian non-profit association for scientific research and multidisciplinary dissemination on blockchain technologies. We established in 2018 a roundtable on government use cases and digital identity. And the association is composed of associates from different companies and also with different expertise. So technical, legal, commercial, and financial. Let's talk about our project. As we said, it's called WordPreSSI Login. It's mainly the implementation of an SSI WordPress plugin for authentication and authorization. We believe that a bridge must be built in order to encourage adoption, because between old and new technologies, WordPress, according to statistics, powers 39% of sites worldwide. So the idea behind the project is to use verifiable credentials instead of username and password. Sorry, I hear a noise. Okay, can I go on?
Yes, please. Sorry.
Okay, sorry. Okay, so the main idea is to use verifiable credentials instead of usernames and passwords. So in this context, the plugin acts both as an issuer, which is of course an optional feature of credentials, but the mandatory feature is that of the verifier of credentials. Among the other features I will describe, there is an identity API plugin architecture. I will explain because we built this. We have the possibility to map existing credentials to WordPress roles. We have an installation consistency check to be able for the admin to be sure that the installation is correct. And we added recently the possibility of shortcodes. And for historical reasons, the plugin was built when there were no main libraries which could support different services. So at first we created an implementation using Intrinsic. Later we used RNIM, and we added other capabilities. The EC library by TNO is a multi-service library which enables to connect to different services. We created a connector for a single Akapai instance because we believe that one of the factors that affect the adoption of SSI technology is also cost. So the Akapai instance enables to create a service without any costs related to the services. And we are also implementing the EPSI, the compatibility with EPSI by using the Walt-ID library, which will be described later. And another important service, of course, is the Verifier Universal Interface by Gattaca, which will be described later. This is the architecture of the plugin. I don't want to discuss all the details, but what I want to explain in this slide is that the user talks with the WordPress installation, while the plugin takes care of talking with the WordPress core. and so implements the features of credential verification, editions, the schema ID mapping, and the user role mapping, and as also the extension interface. The dialogue is between the plugin and the REST API provided by the identity providers, for example, the Verity SDK by Erenim or the Trinsic.id REST APIs, and so on. And also we are developing the compatibility with eSSIF. And in some cases, the dialogue is using webhook events, for example, for Erenim and for ACAPI framework. Of course, behind this, we have the ledgers supported by the libraries. Another very complex slide that I will not discuss too long is the plugin architecture, only to explain that the plugin features an object-oriented interface, and the documentation explains how to create an instance of an interoperability plugin which enables to connect to new services. So for every use case, we have an interface which can, of course, talk to new services. Now let's, of course, have a live demo. And first of all, I want to show you how simple it is for an administrator to install the plugin on a fresh instance of WordPress. So all the administrator has to do is to drop in the plugins folder the SSI plugin, and then he can log in to the new instance of WordPress and activate it. So if we activate the plugin, we have the option to go to the settings page, which of course is a little complex, because we can choose to enable every service, but every service has some particular settings to be done. The documentation explains the meaning of each service and of each setting, and when the user saves the information, has the option to check the configuration, which makes a real API call to the service to be sure that the configuration is correct. When the plugin is activated, of course, we have in the login page, we have a new link which enables SSI authentication. So let's switch to the public demo, which is the address you see in the slide, which can be also tried by yourself. And let's see, for example, the use cases of login and sign up to the system using a cell phone I have on the right side. So let's choose the service. For example, we can choose the EC library, which, as I already said, handles more than one service. And we can choose between login and sign up. Sign up is the functionality which will enable us to receive a new credential from the site. By definition, we issue a credential which has the role of the currently selected default role in the administration settings of WordPress. For example, let's choose these are the services I configured for this demo. Let's choose, for example, the Esatus wallet. And then let's sign up to the site using the Esatus wallet. What will happen is that when I scan the QR code and make the connection with the site, the connection is added. We say OK to go on, and then the site will offer a new credential for logging into the site. This is a random identifier we selected for the user. The role is, as I said, is the default role for new users in WordPress, but can be changed. We accept the credential, save the settings. This is the debug page we left for showing how the EC library talks with our plugin by using a JWT token. We have the confirmation of the credential that has been issued, and we can go to the login page. We choose again to scan the QR code, and this time we will receive, of course, a proof request. So we have a look at the request. We decide to send the credential we obtained in the previous step, and this is the token we received from the EC library. The credential is verified using the signature, and then we can go to the home of the site, and we can see that we are correctly we correctly logged in to the site using this username. Of course, the same can be repeated with the other libraries, and currently we support the Connect Me wallet using Evernym, and the Trinsic wallet directly or by the EC library. This completes my demo. Thank you very much.
Fabio, thank you very much for the presentation, and well, you kept very well in time. We definitely have 2 or 3 more minutes for any questions, and it's very interesting to see how you suddenly making logins much easier.
Yes, one thing I can add is that we are also experimenting a new feature which is very interesting, which is when you save the credential and you give the option to the wallet to respond automatically to proof requests. It's very interesting because you can also check the credential without the user intervention. So by using a cookie on the site, we can regularly send the proof request when the user visits the site, and then the proof request is sent automatically. So there are still lots of features that can be implemented.
Thank you. I also noticed a question in the chat, but it has already been answered in the chat by your colleague as well. So that is very good. The website is ssi.associatione-blockchain.italy.
Yes.
And
yes. Thank you, Massimo.
Yeah, and I just saw several people arriving. So Loretta Anania is among us. She's the project officer for eSSIF-Lab. So she's checking whether we have enough visitors and how well are our presentations. That's great. And also welcome to Anil John. Yesterday I saw Anil's presentation about the Silicon Valley Innovation Program in America. And actually eSSIF-Lab was partly modeled after the Silicon Valley Innovation Program. So Anil, also good to have you here.
Thank you, Oscar. Glad to be here.
Great. So I see more questions in the chat. So Fabio, please address them.
Okay. First of all, the plugin is usable for all WordPress websites. We are currently making a security assessment with the white hat security professionals, which are doing penetration tests in order to be sure that our implementation was correct. So the version that will be released as open source will be able to be installed in every site. And the issuer, I'm going to the question about the issuer functionality. Of course, it depends on the supported library. So if for example, if the library supports issuing of credentials, we define a schema. So for example, in Trinsic, we have to choose a schema ID, and we can map the credentials to that schema, so that we have to define a claim for the identifier and a claim for the role of the user. So of course, the credential must have at least one claim with the how can I say, a distinct identifier for every user, because that will be the username in the WordPress installation. I hope I answered.
Well, thank you for that. And I think it's time to go to the next. By the way, if you are interested in the slides, the recording, everything will be made available afterward.
Of course.
And Esther Mackay also made a reference to the eSSIF-Lab website.
Okay.
So our next presenter will be Lal Chandram from iGrantio about the automated data agreements, which is about making data transactions trustworthy, auditable, and immutable. Lal, you have the floor.
Thank you so much. Can I have the permission to share, please?
Yes, you should be able to present now. Sorry.
Okay, it looks like I have to do a quick restart. I'll be back in a second, yeah.
Oscar, you're muted.
It's great to have you all here, and yeah, let's just wait. There's Lal already back. Please try again.
Okay, I have some problem with the screen sharing for some reason.
Anka has just given you the presenter rights again.
Yeah, I think it's something to do with the GoToMeeting. Yeah, it works now. Yeah, the only option I had was to share the entire computer. So, all right, thank you. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the demonstration of automated data agreements. Today, I will show you how we contribute to making personal data transactions in the digital economy trustworthy, auditable, and immutable. The project was led by us from iGrantio and supported by Lineltech in Sweden and Privacy Ant in Finland. And iGrantio is based out of Stockholm, Sweden. Let me start my presentation giving you some background and context to why this is relevant and the role of a my data operator or a data intermediary. I will then walk you through our work with data agreements and its life cycle before demonstrating our end-to-end solution. The figure in the very middle illustrates the role of a typical my data operator, such as iGrantio, or is also called the data intermediary as per the EU Data Governance Act. You can view my data operator or a data intermediary as providers of infrastructure for enabling a human-centric personal data management and exchange. My data operators provide interoperability at various levels, the technical, semantics, and legal levels, to support the flow of personal data across organizations, where one endpoint is the producer of data, termed the data source, and the other endpoint is the consumer of data, termed the data using service. Data flows from the data source to the data using service. What is essential from a regulatory perspective is to ensure that there is a framework in place to govern that the personal data processed both in data source and the data using service is according to relevant data regulations, such as, for example, the GDPR. And this is precisely where a data agreement comes to play. This slide illustrates the various data agreements needed to enable a trusted and yet seamless exchange of personal data. A B2C data exchange agreement is called the personal data agreement. There could also be a delegation agreement between the individuals. A B2B data agreement is called a data disclosure agreement, which outlines the contractual terms involved when two or more organizations expose or consume data across their organizational boundaries. A data processing agreement is between an organization and their suppliers. In the ADA project, we focus on specifying the B2C data agreement, which is a personal data agreement, which by definition is an immutable record of processing personal data if signed by both parties. For an organization, it captures the conditions to process personal data in accordance with privacy regulations such as the GDPR. While for an individual, it is an auditable receipt for any personal data transaction. As part of the entire project, we've also played an active role in different standardization bodies such as the ISO, where the data agreement specification journey we believe is about to take off. Jan Lindqvist from our ADA team has taken the lead in those discussions and can comment to any questions you might have on the subject at the end of the demo. So this slide shows the data agreement lifecycle. It has got 4 main phases: definition, preparation, capture, and proof. In the definition phase, an authority or a legal entity proposes a data agreement schemas, for example, an industry or a sector-specific data agreement as a template. In the preparation phase, an organization, be it a data source or a data using service, could use existing schemas or define something based on a data protection impact assessment or a DPIA. A DPIA is a structured, risk-based approach where an organization can identify and minimize the data protection risks involved in the use of personal data. It ensures that an organization is compliant with data regulations such as the GDPR. This could be, for example, this particular use of data could be for internal use, or it can also use for exchanging data, for example, via an SSI-based framework. In the capture phase, an individual reviews the data agreement, and once agreed, it is captured in a data agreement as a data agreement record by the organization, and the individual is provided with a data agreement receipt as evidence of the agreement. In the proof phase, an organization is able to demonstrate a valid immutable proof of a data agreement record for a data exchange or any data usage transaction with the individual. This allows, for example, for an auditor to check and ensure records are in place to process the individual personal data. For example, recently, the government of Lithuania fined companies for not being able to demonstrate consent. So this could be a one way for organizations to be completely be clear of how they actually handle personal data. So what we have done as part of the project is to connect a DPIA that is performed via a tool called by the Verifier tooling to the SSI workflow. So the outcome of the DPIA is automatically fed into the outcome of the DPIA is used to automatically populate a machine-readable data agreement that is signed by the organization, be it a data source or a data using service. The data agreement is then fed into the SSI workflow if it is used for data exchange, example as an issuer or a verifier of data, and signed off ultimately by the individual. The developed protocol was implemented in the SSI workflow in the iGovernment.io platform, as well as in our data wallet. During the presentation exchange, the DA, the data agreement, is signed off by the individual. This results in a signed, auditable, and immutable data agreement. So let me now go straight into our actual demo. So on the left side of my screen, I have my mobile phone. So let me switch on so I have my data wallet with a bunch of passports and a bunch of other data agreements like the COVID vaccination certificate and so on. Let me scroll this a bit. So on the right side, I have my browser. So on the very screen that you see here, this is the Verifier tool, which provides a dashboard for any organization that is wanting to perform a data protection impact assessment. So in this case, the data protection impact assessment is carried out for a data exchange between a health center or a test center that is performing your COVID vaccination, the COVID tests. It is fed into an iGovernment wallet, and then it's exchanged to a travel company. And this particular DPIA is performed to evaluate the potential risks and privacy perspectives involved during this information flow. So once all these DPIA is performed, the privacy end is able to generate a machine-readable data agreement and download this as a JSON file. And this is pretty much like part of the work that we did in this project. And this file, for example, this is pretty much like the data agreement in the JSON file format, and you can download it as a JSON file, or you can also take the API and integrate it into any SSI engine, such as, for example, the iGrant.io. So the screen now I have is the iGrant.io enterprise dashboard. In here, there's a company, travel company, which is an airline company that has onboarded itself. And let me go to the data agreement portal, where I can download or even connect directly to the privacy and DPA results, or I can upload the JSON file that has been downloaded from the privacy and based on the risk assessment carried out in the privacy and. And as you can see, the data agreement is now populated into the data agreement forms. All I need to do is to provide a version number. So let me give a hypothetical version number here. And once I'm happy with it, and you can see that the information that travel company is seeking here is the beneficiary name, vaccination dosage, and the vaccination date. And once I'm happy with it, I save the data agreement. And this data agreement is is added into the iGrant registry, the ADA registry component, and converted into an SSI workflow, resulting in a verification over here. As you can see, the data agreement was called Demo Receive COVID Credentials. So what I do now is pretty much generate a QR code associated with that particular data agreement, which is used to consume data, in this case, the COVID credentials by the travel company. Now, let me demonstrate how a typical end user would actually be sharing this data now with the travel company. On the left side, I have the data wallet, where I already have a bunch of COVID vaccination certificates and test results, etc. In this case, I have I have 3 vaccination certificates, my dose 1, 2, and 3. So let me scan this QR code with a share data that is available in the data wallet. So I now share my data. So you can see a data agreement popped up on my data wallet. If I can remove the privacy screen over here and view the agreement, you can see that there are 3 different possibilities emerging. That is for dosage 1 and 2, and also dosage 3. So I also have a possibility to view the data agreement policy here. So you can see all the configuration that has been done based on the DPA is now present in the policy. And once I'm satisfied, and in this case, I'm happy with the data agreement policy and I'm satisfied, I click the confirm button. And my data is actually exchanged with the travel company here. So if I go to the travel company portal, if I may go to the transaction history, you can see a verification is generated, which is essentially of the agent, the travel company agent receiving my COVID credentials, in this case, my name, my dosage information, and the COVID vaccination dose date, basically. So this is very much like the end-to-end demo, but let me also show you how the whole transaction history really works. So if I go to the settings, so at any given point of time, as a consumer or the end user, I can see all the data that have been shared with my shared data option. So over here, you can see the travel company in the very top. 44 seconds ago, you can see that for a particular purpose called Demo Receive COVID Credentials, I shared my name, my dosage information, and the vaccination date. I can also see my data agreement policy. And in our coming version, we also have the signature verification mechanism that is implemented, which provides a proof that I can also show you on my screen in a second. So this is an example of how the data agreement policy is actually also shown with the verification or a signature of both the signing parties. In this case, the organization that has actually created the data agreement actually is signing off, and also the individual, in this case myself, agreeing to the agreement during that particular data exchange transaction. And the green lock over here indicates that the signature is valid and the data agreement can be trusted and can be shared for any audit. So in case if it's, for example, tampered with, you can also see that in this case, for example, an unlock signal is over here. A red signal indicates that the signature is not valid.
Could you start rounding up?
Yes,
please.
This is my last slide. So you can see that it's not valid in this case. So last but not the least, there's a bunch of artifacts that we have produced. We have the data agreement specification that is pretty much open out there. We also have a couple of white papers and also a bunch of open source code. We've also integrated, if you're familiar with Aries, we also have a ready-made installable available for Akamai, as well as we also created our own protocol, DITCOM-based protocol stack that can be incorporated to any Aries-based presentation exchange into the decorator. That's very much my presentation. Thank you so much for giving us the opportunity to be part of this project. And thank you to Lineltech Privacy and also to Gadaka and to Human Colossus Foundation for actively contributing to our data agreement specification journey. Thank you so much.
So Lal, thank you. And obviously the concept of data agreements and definitely automated data agreements lead to questions. So we have one question from Tanner. What about consent credentials concept? Are these the same? Please look in the chat.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, see, what we did is that we come from a consent background ourselves, and what we did is really lift ourselves a step ahead, where a data agreement could be based on different legal bases, and consent being one of them. So if it is consent, the legal basis that you configure into the data agreement will be consent.
Thank you. The second question is from Esther Mackay. I will read. Does this mean that the end user and the travel company both also have some sort of agreement with whoever hosts or offers iGrantio?
It is possible that the travel company and the test center can have an agreement between them, which is called the data disclosure agreement, but it's not mandatory if it is an SSI-based workflow. So what we are, as a next step, what we are really conceptualizing is really, if there's a data exchange marketplace, we want to be able to automatically agree between companies via data disclosure agreement. And that is precisely what we are doing as we speak in standardizing or taking the next steps from the ADA project we have had in standardizing what we call as the data disclosure agreements and calling it the entire suite as data exchange agreement suite to take care of every kind of data exchanges within the data marketplace.
Thank you. If there are no further questions, I would like to give the floor to our next speaker, the last one before the break. That is Walt-ID with their Universal SSI Wallet Infrastructure for Europe. And the presenter, I guess, will be Dominique Biron.
Hi, everyone. Can you see me? I guess not, right?
We can hear you.
No,
We cannot see you.
at this moment you are identified as guest, and we can hear you, Dominique.
Okay, interesting. Well, that's the most important thing. It looks like my camera is not working, but at least you can hear me. That's good. And then screen sharing seems to also work. Thanks, Oscar, for the invitation. Thanks, Oscar, also for picking the name of our presentation, which sounds quite fancy. I have a couple of slides prepared for you, just to give you a brief overview of what we are, who we are, and what we're doing, and then we'll dive into a live demo. I'll try to make it as short and sweet as possible for you to not take up too much of your time. So, about us. Can you see the screens? Oscar, can everyone see them? Yeah, perfect. Yes. Thanks. Okay. Cool, awesome. So about us, we're a European company, and we're basically on a mission to enable developers and organizations to build identity into the web and their applications. And as a company, we're very much focusing on self-sovereign identity. So that's what we're doing on a high level. In terms of traction, as I know many of you in the call, and as you probably know, we started out last year. By now, we have a number of European member states building pilots based on our open source solutions, a number of H2020 projects, and we're also in the core tech stack of Gaia-X. We also got some interesting projects in the private sector involving startups, scale-ups, and enterprises across various sectors, ranging from banking, financial services, HR, education, healthcare, marketplaces, and Web3, and so on. I just checked Docker Hub and updated the number here. So if you check our Docker Hub, you will also be able to see that our two products, the SSI Kit and the wallet, which I'll be showing you a little bit later on, have been downloaded by developers and organizations more than 1.5 thousand times over the last 2 months, which is also quite exciting for us and surprised us a bit. But let's move on to the products. I mentioned them briefly. So the SSI Kit is basically, most simple way of putting it, everything you need to use a self-sovereign identity. So it has 3 components: the signatory for issuers, the custodian for holders, and the auditor for verifiers. And the wallet sits on top. I'll show you a different graphic a little bit later on. And the idea here is basically, while the SSI Kit is a B2B product, for the wallet to be a B2B2C product, meaning that it allows organizations to launch their own identity wallets or supercharge their existing applications with SSI functionality. And so far, the wallet sits on top of the SSI Kit and can be used as an enterprise or consumer wallet. The wallet was also the focus of our NGI project. That's in the focus of today's session. So I think I said the most important things already about those 2 solutions. Obviously, also feel free to ask me questions later on. This slide also shows you a little bit more clearly where our products sit. So you can see the SSI Kit here, let's say in the issuer system as a backend service that enables issuers to sign and issue credentials. The holder as, you know, either the SSI Kit as a backend service for an enterprise wallet, or the wallet as, let's say, a consumer-facing application, and then the verifier again as a backend service. These components can interact with each other as well as underlying registries, which can be, for example, the EPSI blockchain, other, let's say, types of ledgers like Ethereum-based registries, for example, the DNS, or we also support pure peer-to-peer key distribution, such as using DIT-key. So there are very different flavors that our SSI Kit and the wallet support. And we also recently just passed the EPSI conformance testing, which means that if you use the wallet, you should be EPSI compliant based on the testing that the European Commission's teams give out. The guiding principles, I think the most important things I already mentioned. All our solutions are completely open source under the Apache 2 license, which means you can just take them, use them, do whatever you want with them, build solutions on top of it. We are building our solutions based on open standards, such as W3C, DIF, OIDC, and eSSIF standards. We're building our solutions to be ecosystem agnostic in the long term, to be easy to use for developers. So we have a number of, for example, testing tools available. You can use our tools from the command line, or let's say have them deployed on premise in your own cloud, or also have the operations outsourced to our teams. We also make sure and do our best to make the solutions easy to integrate and to be as composable and flexible as possible. And so onto the demo, what I will be showing you today. Here's the 2 layers that we took. So it's a graphic that we typically show before making the demo. So just so you know what we're actually showing you. So in the background, there's the SSI Kit with the signatory, custodian, and auditor components. You can try the SSI Kit from the command line. I'll also be pasting a link in the chat later on that gives you a little bit more information on how to do that. Generally, we have our documentation also publicly available, and we're currently giving our documentation a facelift, which means that it will become hopefully a bit better over the next couple of days and weeks. But today the focus is really on the application layer. So we will be showing you our issue portal, which is the component that an issuer would integrate with their existing systems, and from which, let's say, holder or data owner could request their credentials and data. We will be showing you the wallet, I will be showing you web native flows today, and also a verifier portal, which would be the component that a verifier integrates with their existing systems in order to request credentials from a holder. So switching over, importantly, what you can, this is the link I'll also share in the chat later on. I mentioned before the Get Started page. Here you can also find all the links for the demo, so you can also test this for yourself. So everything I'm doing, I'm just using these public links here. In case something is breaking or does not work, for everyone who has been at yesterday's DIFCOM, you know that the stuff works because Thorsten from yes.com, whom we're working with, showed our wallet in the demo. At least one of the flows that our solution support, but let's see if it breaks or if it works. I know that our developers just pushed some updates today. But I also tried it out like 10 minutes ago, so it should be working. So there are different ways of demoing our solutions. I could show you a flow where you would go to the issue portal and then request a wallet, be redirected to the wallet, and then accept the credentials there, and then go on to the verifier portal, which is the typical flow. Yesterday, Thorsten showed you a flow where you are actually starting with the verifier portal. So you're starting with the verifier portal, being redirected to the wallet, and if the credentials that you need are not yet there, you can basically fetch them from different issuers. Today, we'll be showing you a different flow, which is the flow that starts from the wallet. So this is an account I just created 10 to 15 minutes ago. As you will see, there should be 2 credentials in there. Yes, a verifiable ID. That's eSSIF FC speak for something like a passport. And then we got a verifiable certificate for vaccination. So what I can do now is I can basically, and please excuse it's a quite new feature, so the user interface is not very nice looking, but it works. I can choose an issuer portal that I connected with in the past, like our demo issue portal, and then select a certain credential that is offered from this portal. So now if I click Fetch Credential and log into this issuer portal, which in this case could be a university online portal, for example, you see that the diploma, which I just selected in the wallet, is offered to me. I can also switch language. Here I can also look at which data is currently in there. This would be populated with from the database of the university, obviously in a real use case. And then I can confirm. Now, if everything goes well, I'm redirected to the wallet, and I can see the credential that is being offered to me. Typically, if I'm connecting to an issuer portal for the first time, I also have to accept the first session, if you will. But since I did that already before, no need to do it. I can accept the credential, and now it's also stored in my wallet. Here, I can look, I can click on these credentials filled with dummy data. And what I can do now is I can go to a verifier portal, which would be, let's say, another university for which I want to apply for another education course or whatnot. So now I'm connecting my wallet to request a verifiable ID, as you've seen. So here in my wallet, since I'm logged in, I don't have to authenticate again. I can see the verifiable ID document, which is requested. I can share it. And then the verifier portal also shows you what happens. So this is the default setting of the verification policies that our auditor is performing. So currently we have in place a signature verification policy, a challenge policy, and so on. You can also see the authenticated DID that has been used. In this case, it was a DID key, and you can view the session token. You can also view what was the contents of the verifiable ID that has been presented, and so on. So please feel free to check out this Get Started page. I'll drop the link and play with this demo site yourself. Also feel free to pull our solutions from Docker Hub or just try them directly from the command line. If you have any questions, please let me know. Also, I will post my email address so that you can reach out if there's anything you want to talk about.
Dominic, thank you very much for your presentation. And even though we are not able to see you, well, people can see me, but we could definitely see your slides. So let's check whether there are any questions. And I can at least, from my perspective, mention that I think Walt-ID, the Walt-ID solution is now being used by at least, I think, 4 other eSSIF-Lab subgrantees. So in terms of marketing, you're doing quite well. So I see a question in the chat. Can we use the Ether method with your SSI kit? From Perrin.
Great question. Not yet, but soon. It's on our roadmap. Actually, our roadmap is also public. So you can find our roadmap on our GitHub repositories, and you can also influence our roadmap, obviously. Just reach out and let us know what you need. Generally, our roadmap is steered by organizations who use our software and our clients.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, I see no other questions. My proposal is that we take a 15-minute break. So it is now 5 before the hour. So we shall reconvene at 10 past the hour. Of course, feel free to stay here, maybe to turn your camera on and to chat. I will also mention this in the chat message. Reconvene at 5:10. So thank you, and see you after the break. Sometimes you have the technology hiccups.
Yeah, sorry. I will try to restart my Google Chrome again. I don't know.
Well,
I have some kind of permission trouble. Sorry.
We'll wait for a few minutes. No problem.
Jose, it's a privacy settings that you need to add. Go to meeting, and then you need to restart the go to meeting again. Yeah, the challenge is that we have not been using GoToMeeting for long, Oscar. So.
Yes, I know. And each of the technologies has its own peculiarities.
Yeah, I think the Mac also, you need to configure each and every app.
Exactly. Isn't it great having standards?
Yes.
So meanwhile, you can read in the chat some further clarification by Niels about signing presentation requests and presentations, not only verifiable credentials.
Bug for the 3rd time. I hope this one's the right one. I need to reset up all the, because I had to close all the windows. Let's see if it works. Okay. Can you request me to share my screen? Or maybe I can like this.
I already have. Can you give it a...
Yeah, now perfect.
Now we can see your screen.
Now we see you and we can hear you. Excellent. Please go ahead.
Perfect. Well, I'm sorry because the demo is going to be a little bit troublesome because I had to close everything I had prepared. But well, hello everyone. I'm Jose. We work at Gattaca. I don't know if you already have heard about the Verifier Universal Interface because Irene is quite good at making noise. And well, this is the project we've been working on for the last year on eSSIF. which is simply a standardization effort on SSI frameworks. So we made an analysis, and we were builders of verifiers, and we had also a wallet, and we thought all the points that were troublesome and we would like to break in order to make any wallet compatible and interoperable with any verifier, regardless of the tech stack or the governance framework or whatever. So we defined some APIs that might be in use of the verifier. And well, after some analysis, we were focused on working on those 3 APIs, which are the presentation exchange. Niels just gave a presentation about the work, so I think this one's very well known. Another one about consent management that you also heard on presentation on Igrantio's presentation about data agreements. This covers exactly the same necessities. And the third one is about issue resolution, which there are other efforts on the market, but it's an API designed in order to allow a verifier to know exactly which issuers he may be able to trust. So if he needs some kind of credential based on a legal or a business requirement to know which issuers may comply with the validations and identity verification processes he might need in order to be able to trust that kind of credential, even if he isn't fully aware of all the issuers that there are, or he doesn't know all the companies or whatever. So I will show a little bit the progress that we did on each of those interfaces and the results we got. So, well, the first point to know is that all the results were done in a specification that I'm gonna show later. I try not to make you crazy by switching my screen too much. So regarding the data agreements, we consider them as a consent. Well, Lal already talked about them, but we know that there wasn't any efforts on enforcement, consent, and GDPR structure like in the SSI world, and we wanted to have some kind of relation and a technical enforcement document, maybe, or it depends, but some kind of technical effort in order to have a tracking and may able to keep the relationship between the verifier and the holder once the data has been shared, to have a track of which data I gave. And so it's very tied to a presentation, and once I gave that data, what the verifier can do with it and how long he can keep it and so on. Okay, that's the main rationale behind the data agreement. So what we did was we worked it together with Igrantio, and we tried to get to a common data model, which is also based on Cantava consent receipts and other specs. Jan, I think it's here, and he's very trustable in that field. And we also proposed of a life cycle and protocols for the management of that relation alongside the possible service usage by the user. So if the verifier requests the data in order to provide him some digital service, the user may be able to replace his credentials, to revoke access to some of them, or the verifier may also be able to request them new credentials or forget about some of the old credentials, changing purposes, and all the use cases that you might consider in that kind of situation. And apart from, so we thought about this protocol, and what we did was that we also tried to make it work on the presentation exchange. So for the presentation exchange, we didn't want to rebuild existing work, and we proposed an extension of the diff presentation exchange, because the diff presentation exchange is very well accepted and it's support on different communication protocols. You have the VC HTTP APIs, you have the DSIOP, as Niels also presented. On DITCOM, you have the works on WACI, the diff also to tie a presentation exchange under the DITCOM envelope. And so what we also included is additional capabilities that we consider could be useful on the presentation exchange. So apart from the data agreement, we also proposed signings or signatures of the presentation definitions in order to enforce mutual authentication, which could be very interesting if you consider that most people may use QRs in order to connect from browsers to mobile wallets. And so you have a breaking of the channel, and it could be useful to have that kind of mutual authentication. And also, we also suggested security mechanisms, as we named it, or another protocols to help the problem of identifying the subject of the credentials and the person who is managing the wallet, which is also known as the identity and holder, subject and holder binding. So we offered a mechanism based on including in the presentation definitions requirement or constraints regarding specific keys that may be required by the holder, or no, by the verifier to the holder to sign the presentation. And well, I don't want to extend too much. Finally, on the issue resolution, what we propose is a simple API and with a common data model that, well, we try to base our work and make it compatible with the eSSIF trust framework, because they have a very developed and well thought scalable trust framework for their issuers. And so we wanted to take that work and make it get to a common API or a common model where it could be agnostic to FC, agnostic to eSSIF or whatever, and portable to any other governance framework, but available for any entity or any verifier outside of that governance framework to query and make it used in order to connect for wallets coming from that kind of governance. So I will start showing the results. First of all, we prepared a library. So we opened an open source library that's available on GitHub for everyone. It's made in Golang because our backends are done in Golang. And it contains all the logic for the for the presentation exchange and the data agreement validation. And it's almost a full application. If you want to use it into an application, you should provide a service, an implementation of an SSI service to validate cryptographic credentials or presentations or other SSI objects. Or also the connection with your database in order to keep those documents if you need them, for instance, the data agreements, and persist them. But apart from that, all the logic is done, and it also includes a little controller. So if you have your own, if you run it, you have your own REST API, which conforms to these APIs that were defined on the interop testing groups in order to make some cross interop testing, this is also used on the spec to explain the data the life cycle of data agreements and the presentations. And you also have the ISO resolution, which is still tested in order to ensure that supporting the last version of eSSIF. The other thing I wanted to show is the specification. So the specification is a set of documents. You have the root document where you have all the interfaces listed with the considerations. And for instance, you go to DID resolution, you won't have any information because there's a specific deep working group on DID resolution and all the word is held there. But if you go to presentation exchange, you can see here our extension to these presentation exchanges. And same thing, if you go to the data agreement, you will have the spec of the data agreements with the data model defined with examples, and also with the protocol of the lifecycle management and the process in order to perform modifications and so on. And you have the same thing for the ISO resolution. And I also wanted to perform a little demo on how this could be happening with our technology. So if you're still seeing it, I will share my wallet. So this is the Gattaca wallet, which we integrated the Experience Presentation Exchange library. So it's available on React Native, as they said. And we also integrated all our logic. We make it compatible with EPSI in order to pass the EPSI conformance tests. And so I will show from the Gattaca's verifier. Oops, I need to log in, sorry. Okay. If I take a tenant, here is where I configure. Tenant for me is like QR configuration. And here I can configure all the information I'm gonna request to the user. So now I need to make a full information on the data agreement that's gonna be supported. Okay, that's not seen here, but I may create new purposes, or I have already 2 purposes created, and they contain, well, the legal basis, the method of use, the jurisdiction, the scope, how long the data is stored, where is it stored, everything needed for the data agreement. And I'm also able to select which credentials I want to create. I might even add some, I don't know, device ID maybe, which is device info. I may add my device ID, and I have to, for client authentication. And well, this is using a presentation exchange, the diff and extension. Even if I was an advanced user, I could here configure the presentation definition. But I'm going to create a session on my API. Let me find where it is. Sorry. Okay. Okay. So I will create an exchange session. Perfect. And if I make a presentation on a QR, this is the eSSIF-Lab. I just created an authorization request on my verifier. And on the wallet, I can scan the QR with the authorization request. And you can see here all the presentation. Well, I'm sorry because it's not HD, but you can see here the credentials requested on the front, and you can see also, well, or you might imagine here the purpose of the credentials. And when I click on consent, a data agreement is being shared, and also the presentation is being shared after the data agreement. The verifier using our library, the VCAR library, is verifying that the data agreement is valid and it's matching. And yes, here I can have Gattaca, my service link, my demo link. And when on the wallet, I can see all my previous data agreements. And I can see that with Gattaca, those are my credentials. And we are working on how to display the rest of the data agreement to the user. But that was everything. Thank you for listening. I will stop sharing my screen. Perfect.
Thank you, Jose. And I think the floor is open for questions. Any questions on the Verifier Universal Interface standardization or pre-standardization, testing, and also the 3 sub-projects therein?
Hey there, this is John Henderson with the Energy Web. I just have a question about I think it's the UI core that was just mentioned with Gattaca. You're mentioning that you can configure presentation definitions. Is that right? Is that a part of the universal verifier spec? How the presentation definitions are defined?
Well, it's not specifically part of the spec. It's more part of our product in order to make it easier to test. But yes, on the API, you may just create a specific presentation definition you like, and just use it to see how that presentation definition may also, well, may not, if you want to use the full extension of the presentation exchange with data agreements, you will need to extend that presentation definition with the reference to the presentation, to the data agreement, sorry. But once you have created that, and that's what the library allows you to have those extensions, you may also use the presentation definition in a normal presentation exchange flow, considering that you also perform the data agreement flow alongside with it.
Thanks.
Thank you.
So basically, just to add a little bit of information, Irene speaking here. So the presentation exchange used at WUI, as Jose mentioned before, is leveraging DIF's presentation exchange, which already integrates the data model for a presentation definition. And the spec at WUI, what it does is to extend that DIF's presentation exchange spec with 3 additional features. So the main presentation definition is part of DIF's PE, but WUI complements it.
Thank you for that addition. And by the way, Irene, could you highlight what is the current status of moving some of this eSSIF-Lab work into DIF?
Pretty advanced. We've been holding conversations for the past 2-3 weeks. They're ready to move on the work. There are some minor details concerning onboarding all WUI participants into DIF for legal purposes, but the process is ongoing. So it's just a matter of time until all the steps are executed.
Excellent, and thank you for all this effort to make sure that it's not only great work, but that the great work will live on also after the eSSIF-Lab project has stopped. So I see a follow-up question from Florin to, I guess, to Jose in the chat.
Yes, I was trying to answer him on the chat to avoid having too much. I already took too much of your time while trying to set up the connection. Sorry, it's late on a Friday.
We are totally fine. So maybe it's time for me now to say some closing words. So this from now on, our these 5 eSSIF-Lab subgrantees are formally dismissed because they have achieved all the deliverables, and I think they are an excellent example of how eSSIF-Lab is building an SSI ecosystem together. So we started with the WordPress SSI, which is WordPress is a very convenient way of making SSI available to the public, but they also integrated with 4 or 5 different wallet infrastructures from eSSIF-Lab. The automated data agreements have been contributed in standardization, and I'm aware of several collaborative projects and interop testing as well. Walt-ID has been, arguably the first real implementation of the European EPSI specifications is now being used by already several parties. Then the presentation exchange, which was coordinated by Spherion, was coordinated with several subgrantees and also brought into DIF pre-standardization and all types of interop testing. And then finally the Verifier Universal Interface, which is some pre-standardization by Gattaca and a lot of other subgrantees that happened at eSSIF-Lab, and that's now being transferred to DIF. So these are great individual projects, but what makes them even more great is how they all link together. So with these closing words, I really want to thank our subgrantees for these presentations, and of course, let's keep in touch. And thank you all for being present at this late Friday afternoon. and I wish you all a happy weekend. Goodbye, everyone. And of course, applause to everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Very good. Goodbye.
Thank you, Oscar, for the work.
Good work.
Ruud, I think we had 84 participants at the maximum.
85 actually. 85 was the peak, but there were 4 of us.